Just be the change that you want to see in the world. You have the potential to make such a large impact. Just if you see something that needs to be done, you don't need to wait for someone to do it. You can do it too.
Hello and welcome. Everyone matters, especially when it comes to the issues which shapes the future of our youth. Let's start a conversation which is thought provoking and which empowers the youth. Today, we have Ronelle King joining us from Barbados. Welcome, Ronelle, to my show. Say something with Mads.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Ronald is somebody whom I have been following for a long time on LinkedIn, and she has done some amazing work. She works for gender equality. She's a change maker. She's a social entrepreneur and an activist, and she has a lot on her plate. So finally, she is here on my channel. I'm excited to know who Ronald is. Ronald, let's dive into your life. Take us back to your journey since childhood. Where did you get educated? What are you doing? And a little bit about your beautiful country, Barbados. Over to you.
Thank you for the question. Thank you again for having me on the show. My name is Ronelle King. I'm 30 years old. I'm based in the beautiful island of Barbados, which is a small island in the Eastern Caribbean region, with a population of around just under 300,000 people. So very, very small. Um, I was born in 1992. I grew up just near the capital of Bridgetown, and I went to a couple private schools. Education in Barbados is free. It
Okay.
is considered of a very high quality. There are a lot of people who migrate to Barbados, especially for the education. And there are persons, prominent persons in history as well, who've credited the education that they got in Barbados, like Shirley Chisholm, the first Black woman to pursue presidency in the US. Um, but I digress. So the education system, I went to the Rock Christian Primary School. Then I went to a public school called Blood School, one of the fifth highest schools here. And then I went to a private school called Ursuline Convent School. After that, I pursued tertiary education, still doing it at the University of West Indies, Cave Hill
Okay.
campus, which is a regional tertiary institution. So as I was saying, education is free, it's quality, but it's free up to the tertiary level. Our the founders of modern Barbados and the founder of Free Barbados, Independent Barbados, believed that education was a human right, which touches on the Sustainable Development Goal number 4. And so they believe that we are entitled to not just education, that every child is entitled to quality education, and that could take them places. Um, my island, most people know my island because of Rihanna. We're so
Mm.
small, but we're known to make such a large impact wherever we are. So now I would say it's not just Rihanna, it's also our Prime Minister, the first Prime Minister, female Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia
Oh,
Motley. She is a leader, a global leader now, championing sustainable development and climate resilience and addressing climate change. So yeah, that is in a nutshell my island. I would encourage people
mhm.
to definitely look it up and research. We're known for
Mm.
being a very beautiful island. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Great. Ronald, tell me, when you were a young girl, were you always into doing something for the social cause, doing something for society, or when did you get this idea that I want to give back to the world what I'm receiving?
Um I think for me I was always a very empathetic child. I My grandmother would describe me as being very, very sensitive. I was very passionate about issues, and I didn't like to see injustices. And
Okay.
I always kind of felt that urge that something had to be done about it. Like almost like, if can't you see something is happening is not right, why isn't anyone doing anything about it? And then when I got older, I recognized that I had the capacity to do something about it. And so I decided that's what I was going to do. When I
Mm.
saw injustice and I'm capable of addressing it, I would do that, or I would support those who are addressing the issue.
You have chosen this topic of chosen this area rather of working with UNSDG goals and gender equality. So when this all UNSDG goals as such came into your life?
I think what you're describing is partially because a lot of the information is kept at the top. What we know of the Sustainable Development Goals comes out of like the UN, and not everybody's in the United Nations space. And I think it
Yeah.
speaks to a failure of our governments and our representatives
Yes.
who go into these spaces and
Absolutely.
don't bring back the information and make sure it's accessible to the average person, um, which really and truly they're supposed to do. But at the same time, recognizing they can't do everything. So, which is why civil and takes that mantle. Now, for me, I was introduced to the Sustainable Development Goals through entering again the UN space. Prior to that, I had never heard of the SDGs, much less the Millennium Goals, much less a lot of the things that I heard once I got into this space.
True,
And
we all have.
I felt I felt as though like not only was this being introduced to me, it felt like it was being introduced really late, and we were
Yeah,
already not going to make this deadline. And it felt like, you know how Greta Thunberg talks about climate in a way that everybody's aware, but there's no
correct.
urgency behind it. And you feel that sort of way, and you feel like, okay, well, I have the capability to to prioritize this and use my voice and use my platform to educate persons, especially as many youth as possible. One of the reasons that I focus on the youth especially is because I don't want them to ever have to wait to get into a space like the UN to know about these things. I feel as though the information should be accessible to them so that they could help, you know,
Mm,
push towards
mm,
meeting that deadline, or at least if there's an extension, we don't have to take again so long,
mm,
um, mobilize the youth to be able, because if we're being honest, it's usually you who are in
mm,
tune with seeing that it's not too late,
mm,
and they're making changes or doing what they have to do to ensure that they save the planet, to ensure that everybody who's disadvantaged is no longer disadvantaged, so on and so forth. So sometimes I
mm,
felt like when I was in the space engaging elected officials or senior, high level people, like they felt like I wasn't getting the drive, the urgency, the will
mm,
to address these
mm,
issues. So I'm like, you know what? I need to go back to the people where I am. I'm youth. I need to find like-minded youth, and we need to come together to, address these issues.
mm. So, Ronald, I would like to ask you something which I am very curious to know. You are a recipient of Queen's Young Leader Award in 2018, and how was it getting this award? And tell us about this, the whole euphoria about winning this.
So the Queen's Young Leaders Award program, I felt as though it was when you receive any award for your work, it feels good to
Yes,
be recognized and it feels validating of your work.
yes,
Especially when you as a young person, you can be turned away from so many spaces because people feel as though, you're young, you don't know what you're talking about. Maybe you're not going to be able to make as big of impact, as you say that you would like to. And it could be sometimes very discouraging, that level of ageism. And so to
yeah,
have someone outside, looking in and saying, you're doing really great work. And I think that you should be
wow,
honored for that.
lovely.
And I think that not just honored for that, but recognized at the highest level, um, it makes you feel like, and I think that's why the awards program was created, so that youth who are fighting their work is not only validated, but they feel encouraged because a lot of
Yes.
us were, not necessarily me, but a lot of us in that program were getting um not feeling necessarily discouraged, but they felt as though again that they were not being seen, they weren't being given what they should have
Okay.
been given to, do the work that they needed to do. And so I just I felt really great.
Wow,
um,
lovely.
I met a lot of lovely people who I continue to stay in contact with and who I've collaborated with since. And yeah, I felt as though it was something that gave me a burst of energy to continue the
Yes,
work that I
correct.
needed to do.
When you win such a big award, the spotlight is on you and a lot of media attention, a lot of people ask questions. Do you also get a lot of fund for what you're doing? How do you get this working at the ground level?
So a lot of our work started out as we were sponsored
Okay.
by businesses and institutions who felt very strongly about our work. We didn't start off much like most organizations. We started off as a digital form of activism, and then we formed an organization. And so a lot of our what we asked for was for persons to pay, in kind, pay for these things, and then we collected them. So we didn't necessarily have to deal with the grant funding at first. As we grew,
Okay.
we understood how nonprofits work. We then started to learn about grant writing, proposal writing, but a lot of our funding is from donations, in kind sponsorship, and also just general funding, not just from um, we have institutions like the High Commission of Canada, which a
Support.
heavy focus of theirs is gender equality. So our Pink
Okay.
Parliament program is partially funded by them.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. I read about this big parliament program as funded by Canadian government. So tell us about this. This is about empowering youth to be in policy making in governance, right? So how did it start? And you were the founding member. You started this on your own. And what was the thought behind it? And where is it now? What is it doing at the level of young women, empowering them to be change makers?
In 2017, I had gotten the opportunity to go to the UN to
Oh,
write a report and speak to the UN on the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. One of the things that I spoke on was increasing women's participation in politics, because we recognized that there was a connection between the work that we wanted to do in policy making and legislative frameworks to address gender based violence, that we were butting heads with policymakers who didn't understand it, didn't see the importance, and we found a lot of them were men. um, and not just generally prioritizing women's issues. So we felt, okay, there needed to be an increase of women in politics, but not just because they're women, because that doesn't mean that they're going to see that these are important issues. Women do uphold patriarchy and sometimes can be disappointments in this space because they don't have that gender justice consciousness. And so we were creating a space to encourage young women and girls to develop that consciousness, recognizing the history of women's participation in politics. We got into politics because we were being underrepresented, the same
uh,
issues. What we did, our focus was this intersectional approach, not only looking at like women who are straight, able-bodied women, but taking into consideration
okay.
women with disabilities or women who are religious minorities, or you get what I'm saying. And so this is a program that we do for 6 months each year. We've engaged over 110 girls so far, and
Wow.
we're about to get ready to prepare for our fifth cohort. There's been interest for the program to be replicated in other countries, and there have been offshoot replications of the initiative in other countries as far. There is a
That's what
need
I
for
was,
it.
yeah, that's what I was going to ask you, that how is it replicable in other countries? So you select women and train them for 6 months. What do you do with them? And when they pass out, What is it that they want to do? What is it cohort all about? Just take me through that.
So for some of the girls, what we first let them know is that politics isn't only just elective politics. They can make change through diplomacy. So again, for example, a lot of the negotiations as it relates to gender equality isn't only done in parliament. It's
Hmm.
through negotiations in policy, through different countries and stuff like that. Being political scientists, we've had situations where in some of the Caribbean countries, one Caribbean country in particular, their elections carried on for 6 months.
Oh,
And because they could not resolve it, and they had
oh,
to find a political scientist who was actually my teacher at the time and take her all the way to that country to help resolve the issue. And she's
oh,
one woman, so you're seeing the importance of people who are in politics addressing a lot of wider issues. That could have turned out very badly, but thankfully it was resolved. So they get to learn from these women, from these
okay,
people, trailblazers, women who would have enacted policy that they benefit from today. So they get to learn about the mindset of these women and
okay.
understand what is needed to address the gaps that exist in policy that focuses on gender equality.
So these women are what age group?
14 to 20.
Okay, so along with their regular school and college education, they also do this, or they take out time on weekends and do it regularly.
Yeah,
Huh?
yeah.
Okay, okay,
So they
that's
get to
very
go tour parliament. They get to speak to the persons at the highest level. They've been invited to parliament by members of the House of Assembly, the Senate. They've been invited to, oh my goodness, the residents of the High Commissioner of Canada. They've spoken on various platforms on issues affecting youth. What they
interesting.
talked on topics of how COVID impacted education. They've talked about barriers to women's participation in politics, a lot of wide ranging issues that they're passionate about. So we build their capacity and we give them platforms as well to speak on these issues and to work beyond the program and, to eventually find their way into that space where they can really affect change.
Wow. So it's basically a lot of, like, people may not know about so many things as they are not exposed to it, or maybe this is for all group of like economic strata, right from a lower to the you pick up girls who are just don't have any other options of reading, or maybe not do not even have internet connections, or for these people to get this platform, is it uh, do you see a actual change in these girls when they finish this, and what do they do after this? Their eyes are open to the world, so what is the
Mm.
next step they take?
So yeah, we don't limit. If you have an interest in pursuing a career in politics,
You
then
are free.
that's all you need. And we provide, if it is that you don't have any knowledge of politics, we do intensive workshops so that they're not left behind in the program. We work with them. We try to keep, so for example, there is a cost to the program, but it's not high cost. We absorb the majority of the cost. And for girls who cannot afford it, period, that's no problem. We fundraise for them. So they don't
Wow.
ever have to worry about it. Even if we run out of scholarships, we accept them and we find a way to cover their costs. Um, they they're like I said, they're girls who've gone on from the program to I can't even begin to touch on where they've gone and where they're going. Because like I said, the program's only been run from it launched in 2019, but the spaces, the doors that they've been able to pass through as a result of the program, it is a phenomenal experience. And seeing how, if you visit the Pink Parliament page, and I will share the link with you, you can read their testimonials on it.
Please
Um,
do that.
thank
Yeah.
you.
My next question to you would be, what do you think is the biggest issue facing the youth now?
Um, I think for youth around the world, most of them would say there's an issue of youth unemployment. That is largely an issue for them. But I think for them, what may be a large issue is feeling like unrepresented and
Yes.
just
Unheard. Mm.
unheard group. Yes, they
Yeah.
they're often relied upon by our just campaigned only towards when there's a need for votes, but their issues are
Ah,
never prioritized. They're not,
true.
they're seen as like just collateral damage, in the face of
Correct.
everything
Yes.
else.
Yes.
So for us, not just in Barbados, but in the region, we use our platforms and we talk about how we need to mobilize as a strong voting bloc to send a message to politicians that we are not to be overlooked and that we have the power to make and break an election as well. That they tend to cater heavily, let's say, to the older people who have a uh, proven track record of coming out to vote. But because there's a lot of youth voter apathy, they feel as though the youth are kind of fickle. So they're not as
Mm,
important as those who are generally strong and steady. So youth
mm,
having to mobilize in that way to show that they are a strong voting bloc and they need to
mm.
prioritize their issues, I think that is the issue for them right now. And you're seeing it around the world, to be honest.
True. You have worked at the ground level a lot. One or two incidents which has really left a mark on you, and something which you recollect that this has made a real, this person, this maybe a person or an incident somewhere while in your journey of activism, something which has left a mark on you, something which you want to share with our audience.
I think one of the issues, based on the work that I would have been doing, that pretty much left a mark on me was just seeing how there are. So my country recently became the world's youngest republic, right? And so we have a lot of colonial era laws. And so our belief as young people is that a lot of these laws need to be removed, not just because of us wanting to create a new and Barbados in our image, but feeling that a lot of these laws do not benefit us and in some ways unfairly target us. So we had a situation where, and this has been going on for years, where girls unfortunately would be caught under this law called wandering. So if they're, let's say, being abused at home and they run away, they would be caught under this law and put in a juvenile detention center. There's that. Recently, there was a lot of hurrah around it in the last couple of years because what they found out was that the girls were being really unfair at the institution. And youth from around the country felt as though this was very unjust and they mobilized in a way to hold the government accountable and to demand not only that they address the issue, but that because what they did was that they implemented a board, an oversight board. They demanded youth representation on that board as well, which they got. And it showed how, and this wasn't like just trained, it wasn't one organization, it was several different youth coming together and saying, listen, this is unfair. These girls can't speak for themselves because they're in the institution and they're being muted. And we needed to advocate for them. And so they addressed that issue. And very recently, it came down to the point where two of the girls, they got a lawyer and they sued the government. They won, and the law is being removed off the books. And
Oh,
for me, what that showed was that, again, the power of youth and addressing this much wider issue that needed to be addressed. And for me, what that showed me was that, especially the work that we do with Pink Parliament, as long as you can educate persons on how their rights and how to advocate for themselves and others, you're giving them like very important tools to life, and they have the
yeah.
power to change the world essentially, or just to change their country. It's very regardless of the point. But the second thing was our post high school certificates. There's a education exam that we do. Um, and in COVID, because we're a small island, we're part of uh, a region together, the Caribbean region. We have our own institutions, much like the European Union. And so we coordinate a lot of these things together. So it wasn't just only Barbadian children affected. Um, what they tried to do was try to have the normal exams during COVID. It did not work out that way, and a lot of children were disadvantaged. They didn't get their results in time to be able to send it to their scholarship along with their scholarship
Okay, got it.
applications. Yeah. And so what they did was that they protested. And they didn't just, these were high school children. They didn't just protest in Barbados. They used the internet and mobilized across the entire Caribbean region and protested for their results, for a swift and just for everything to be resolved in a way that was favorable for them. And they were ignored a lot of the time, when they were doing
Okay.
it. It was
Uh,
almost discouraging for a lot of them, but the way how they held strong to it was amazing to see.
Wow, lovely. So I see a lot of people on my channel who are working on UNSDG goals. So my question to you, I think this would we would have to summarize everything here, is that a youth need to work on these goals, and they need somebody whom they can analyze, whom they can look up to. Can I'm doing this? So in Barbados, if young people are reading about these UN, they know that Ronald is working, and she's there to reach out. So how do they connect with you? How do they come in contact with you? Do you actually go into villages and give them a talk about this gender inequality?
Um, so I have not had the opportunity to go, I guess because of COVID,
Okay.
to go into, let's say, the communities to educate them on the SDGs, especially given the new title I would have. But I've had the opportunity to visit schools to touch on issues
Schools,
that were
yeah,
affecting
yeah.
youth.
Schools are the best
Um,
places.
so I've, even my university had, um, gone, I had volunteered with them to go into the schools to teach them about gender-based violence and teen dating violence, things that were relevant to them. Um, yeah. So, but besides that, I'm always very accessible. You could always reach out to me on social media, which is something that the youth tend to prefer to do. Um, and yeah, if you reach out to me, I generally respond. People call me directly sometimes. So yeah.
Because I'm sure when this interview is aired, especially about big parliament, I think there will be a lot of discussion because we need this. So people might reach up to you. I will post the link in my description about what you said, to read more about it, to share how what work you are doing. That 6 month cohort sounds wonderful if we can replicate it in different parts of the world. Now, do you have anything about any books which you want to share with our audience, which you are reading, and I think they should read and get inspired? If you have some names, you can share with us.
I guess I have two books that I would share. It is How Europe Underdeveloped the Caribbean by Walter Rodney and How Britain Underdeveloped the Caribbean by Hilary Beckles. I think those are two great books to read, and it connects a lot of wider issues to how, as developing small island developing states that have a colonial past,
Yes,
how, not what the impact of that is in modern day right now. And we're seeing it, not only people think of it just in terms of finance, but look at climate change. It's crazy how our small countries help fund the industrial revolution, but then we're being affected as a
correct.
result of it.
You know,
But
that's
yeah.
that's that's amazing. Like, you need to know, I think every child, every youth need to know about the history of the country first to even think of its future. Unless we know where we come from, what are we doing, we are more
Mhm.
interested in what the Western culture, where how the British rule, what they did in their country, rather than what how we came out of. our legacy, our growth, our independence struggle. I think all our countries' struggle is so inspiring. I was not so interested in this when I was in school, maybe the way that is
Mhm.
taught. But once you are
Mhm.
outside, out of the school, there are so many good books about your own country's history that it's become much more fascinating now when I know
Yeah.
what history is.
I think it's
Um,
also important to know just not only because of that, but also to see why the way we are, how we're connected.
everything.
Like I was saying
Yeah,
to you earlier, like we have a population of Indian descendants. So we have Indo-Barbadians. And they're persons who are have a misconception in the Caribbean, and when they find out, that they're Indians, they're like, how did they get there? you know,
yeah. It's
and
all
you
the
learn.
world was all connected by trade, and yeah, there's so many different countries, so many people. The journey, the history is so fascinating. Yes. There's an interesting book called Prisoners of Geography. If
Hmm.
you get that book, you must read it. It's an amazing
Hmm.
book about how geography defines the people who we are. So it's a fantastic book to read.
Hmm.
Ronald, we have come towards the end of our talk, and this is a section where you get to ask a question to me. It's kind of a role reversal. Do you have a question for me?
I was trying to think of a question. I guess the question that I have is, how, where would you like to see youth development go in your country of origin?
Okay, a lot needs to be done. We have such a big country, so many issues of unemployment, education. But yes, uh, things are moving very fast. People have started. The first thing I think we need is the people don't realize how important it is to learn their about their culture, about their mother tongue, about learning, and then comes English. You can't be just doing English language thinking that that's how you aspire, that that's the growth. Like if you are English speaking, you have achieved something in life. Yes, it is aspirational. But what about the culture? What about you don't know your state how it runs? You want to look at the world, how it will happen. So we have so many different states, so many different cultures, so many. Everybody wants to run to a one or two particular state which is overcrowded, like I said, Mumbai, like Delhi, etc., because that is the work there available for job, etc. So we need to have all kind of good schools and good colleges and good hospitals everywhere, which is happening, so that people don't rush leaving their beautiful cities into the one of few handful of cities and live a miserable life over there, whereas
Hmm.
their states are so much beautiful. So that's all happens at the policy level, ground level, that if they get job in their own country, own state. Our one state is like one big country, so it's that
Hmm.
big. So I think that's what I wish for people, that take your roots, go back to your roots and start working. So many people are back in their villages and after COVID, and they didn't come back. They've started farming, they've started new business over there, and that's they are much more happier than living a life of labor, life on the roads. They're squat,
Hmm.
they are just don't have roof over their head. So I think there's a lot of issues, but youth especially find their identity is very different, very difficult.
Okay. So just touching on what you said, so you would especially encourage youth who may have gotten the opportunity to migrate, let's say, to the more developed states where they will get more opportunities, that once they get those opportunities and they benefit, if they have the capability to give back to their communities that they would have left, so that
Of,
there's not so
of
much
course.
brain drain in that area, so that persons don't have to leave to begin with.
They send the money back to their
Hmm.
people, and that those people grow. The next generation are better off. One, two generations struggle, and next, it's always something. As you said, we people, youth are looking for some anchor. They're looking for some idols. they're looking for some heroes in their life. So if they can identify those heroes, we need
Mm.
more people who are role models. Most of the people who are working tend to be shatter their images after some time. Oh, we thought he's like that. Okay, even he is corrupt. So we need more people who are corruptionless, who have clean image, whom people can follow and say, I want to become like them. We don't have to look outside the country. That's the sad part. We need to have more in our own country.
I get you. And that's important.
Thank you so much for being here with us and giving us so much time. And this was the most enlightening conversation I had in a long, long time because of the way you are working, because of the kind of work you do. And you are doing an amazing job. And I wish you a lot of success in what you do. Do keep in touch. And what would be your parting words?
Just be the change that you want to see in the world. You have the potential to make such a large impact. Just if you see something that needs to be done, you don't need to wait for someone to do it. You can do it too.
Thank you so much. And for those who are listening this week, please subscribe to my channel, show, leave comments, and we will bring another change maker next week on Say Something with Mads. And as I say before ending every week, do a little bit about your planet. The small step at your end can make a big difference. See you and bye bye. And thank you, Ronnie.
You.